Plainview. Good to be here. And yeah, calling this a keynote address is probably a stretch. It's more or less going to be a sort of update. So, but it'll be pretty quick, so we'll get you out of here. Just want to hit on a couple of high points. I joined the Checkoff about 14 months ago. I was with A&M for a number of years as a research and extension agronomist with grain crops, and really what I'm doing now is just a lot like I was doing at the university, except it's just completely focusing on sorghum, and then I have national responsibilities. It's what I'm doing. So this is what the Sorghum Checkoff tries to do. We spend money on demand and value enhancement. We have guys in our office that's all they do is work on that part of it. What I do is more in the productivity end of it. It's what I focus on in the agronomy of sorghum. Now I'm going to talk a lot about the agronomy of sorghum today. I'm just going to hit on some things that we're doing with the Checkoff. Make a couple of points at the end on some agronomics, but that's about it. I want to let you, just make you be aware, and you may hear some of this in the news, but sorghum received the most money they've ever received from the federal government doing research this last year. And that was through DOE of all people. And total, it's about $72 million that went to 6 to really about 10 different groups of people or teams that are working on biomass sorghum for energy. Well, biomass sorghum, what is that going to do for you guys? Honestly, probably not a whole lot from a biomass sorghum standpoint. I don't see biomass sorghum or sweet sorghum, any of those coming into play in this region anytime soon. But what this $72 million will do, things they discover looking at biomass sorghum should pertain in a lot of ways to grain sorghum. And so that's where the benefit, I think, to you guys is going to come from. So what DOE is doing, they're sponsoring all this research that's going into phenotyping of sorghum. And so they're using all kinds of fancy equipment and sensors and you name it. This particular site is in Maricopa, Arizona. This is a big gantry system that goes over, about a football-sized field of sorghum. And this little white box there just has probably $3 or $4 million worth of sensors on it. And so what it's trying to do is, you name it, it's trying to sense it on the plant. So it's trying to determine, of course temperature, which we can already do that, but leaf area, you name it, it's trying to do. And basically what all of these systems are trying to do is make a 3D image of the plant. So they can actually count plants, they can hopefully even count the number of kernels on that head. It's ultimately what they're trying to do. Looking at composition, all kinds of things. So all these different groups are looking for all kinds of different ways of doing this, from using drones to rigs mounted on a tractor where they're taking detailed information. These robots that are actually in the field that fit down a 30-inch roll and go down and stick a probe out and measure things on that plant. So it's amazing the technology that's going into this. And it's all goes to speeding up basically the breeding process. And right now the big bottleneck, not only from sorghum but other crops, is how much phenotyping you can do in the field and tying that back to the genomics. And so that's what this technology is trying to improve upon considerably. I mean, it's an unbelievable amount of data that can be collected that a person just couldn't do. And so this technology certainly is going to be used in sorghum, but it also, I'm sure, will be used in other crops. In fact, there's a big push right now where all the commodity groups are coming together. Corn is actually kind of leading the charge on this. But the idea is to kind of mimic this program here into other crops and hopefully get some major funding through Congress to make that happen. But all the commodities have kind of come together and see this as a big way to improve all the crops in the U.S. So anyway, just wanted to make you aware of that. And for whatever reason, sorghum is kind of the favorite child right now with the federal government. And we actually expect another $30 to $40 million to probably come into funding sorghum research. And we think more of that will be focused into some other areas rather than just what we're seeing here. There's quite a bit of work being done with drought and salt tolerance and some things like that that's indirectly associated with this project here. So just wanted to mention that to you. Sorghum Checkoff, we are putting in some money into that program. It's nothing compared to $72 million. We actually put in $500,000 to show grower buy into this project and also to encourage more direct work with grain sorghum than just the biomass. Some things we're doing and looking at in funding. This number one is actually pretty important. Looking at sorghum germplasm to identify lines that inhibit crossing and gene flow from sorghum dicot, sorghum elephants, or Johnson grass. That's really a big deal. If we're going to improve sorghum, especially from a trait standpoint, we've got to eliminate that flow of pollen or genes from Johnson grass in the sorghum and going back and forth. And so that's really a big deal, I think, for sorghum improvement in the future, is to solve that problem. And there's guys who think they can do that. So that's something that we're looking at. Develop over time, grass control in sorghum, that's something that we've been talking about for years. I think most of you know, they finally did approve an ALS trait called Enzyme sorghum. That's the name of the sorghum that has the ALS trait in it. And you'll be able to use over-top grass with a compound, which actually is a sulfur accent. Is a product that will be labeled on that. Long time coming. Grass control in sorghum. This is not a GMO product. They actually got the trait from Shattercake and introduced it into grain sorghum. Going to be a lot of stewardship guidelines that are going to go along with this technology that you'll have to follow to use it. And it's going to be important that you follow those stewardship guidelines. But you'll hear more about that in the next couple of years. I wish I could tell you you're going to see that technology next year. It's going to happen. It's hard for me to believe that, but it's not. It's going to be probably 2018 before we actually see any hybrids, I think, in the field that have this grass technology. And there's some reasons for that I'd be glad to share with you, but that's where we're at. Double haploid technology. Something's been in corn for a while now. I think wheat's got it also. This gets beyond me very quickly from a breeding standpoint, but that's something that we're funding and looking at in sorghum. What that basically means, if we can get double haploids into sorghum, we can probably cut the introduction of new hybrids into the market by 4 years. So now it takes 10 to 12, cut off 4 years from now, which would be a great thing to have. Non-tillering sorghum. That's something I felt like for a long time we really need is non-tillering sorghum. I'll speak a little bit more about that as we get into this, but that's something else that we're looking at. I think there's some promise there. What I do in my position, one thing that I've tried to do in the 14 months that I've been with the Checkoff is try to be a resource for consultants and agronomists with seed companies and co-ops and that sort of thing. It's been my goal. And I'm developing an email list I send out once or twice a month, having to do with sorghum agronomics, more recently with sugarcane acre more than anything else. That goes out mostly to consultants and various people. Several of you in the audience don't get that. And if you want to be put on that list, give me your business card, let me know, we can put you on that list. Facilitate new weed control trials. Sorghum has always been this kind of Me-Too crop. If it works in corn or works in wheat, maybe it'll work in sorghum, so we'll try it. And so what we're trying to do is really take some of these products that are actually being used in corn or wheat or other crops and seeing if, in fact, they have a fit that could possibly use in sorghum. And so we funded some trials this year looking at more of those types of products. Just see if we can find something. If we can find something that work there, then we'll visit with the company and hopefully get that label for use in sorghum. We do need more tools. Wayne and I mentioned the atrazine earlier. Very critical for sorghum that we don't lose atrazine potency. That's very important to us. Fungicide trials is something that I wanted to fund this last year. Not so much for this area of dryland sorghum, but if you've got good irrigated sorghum, where you're really pushing the yields, we're using fungicides a lot of times in corn to enhance yield. There's no reason that shouldn't also work in in sorghum. And so we're funding some studies to look at that on some of those higher end production fields. Also supporting some forward sorghum work there at Bushland. One thing that I wanted to do when I started this position is I wanted to get us a herbicide injury guide developed for sorghum. We have those for most of the other crops, but it's really lacking. If you do a Google search for, staple injury on sorghum, it's hard to find much on that. Excuse me, on cotton, I guess. I'm going to get a little confused here. Staple, going back to sorghum injury staple injury from staple from sorghum. I'll get this straight in a minute. Hard to find that kind of information, and so we're trying to develop that and work with Dr. Dotre on that. And should this winter have a good set of pictures, I think, it'll be on our website. We'll probably develop some kind of publication where you can visually see a good increase in sorghum. Certainly every year I get those calls. Well, if I got something going on in my field, is this drip or something, or whatever the case may be. So we're trying to develop that. Of course, sugarcane aphid has been a big deal. We put in probably about $700,000 over the last 2 years research for sugarcane aphid. We had about $350,000 last year, about close to that actually this year. When it's all said and done. Spread across various states. We actually haven't done as much funding right here in this area as we have in some other areas. And the reason for that is we just didn't know we were going to have a sugarcane aphid problem here. Certainly we did last year. It blew up on us. We just didn't know we were going to have that issue again this year. Fortunately, it's been a lot less, but there has been enough sugarcane aphid out there we can do research on. So there are some studies going on in this area. But we take what we learned in South Texas and Louisiana and other areas, and I think we can apply that here. So we have those studies going on. We're also conducting, several variety trials around the region, trying to find varieties that have more tolerance, to the sugarcane aphid. And we're finding that's clearly are differences in hybrids and how they tolerate sugarcane aphid. We've got a list of those, and I think after this year we'll have a better list of that. We did put together this publication called Defense Against the Sugarcane Aphid that I'm rather proud of, but it's got all the information that we basically learned from the previous 2 years. We don't have the 2016 information in there. It's kind of summarized into this little pocket handbook that I think is pretty handy. And I think it's going a long way in helping us, manage sugarcane aphid when we run into it. So anyway, we have put a fair amount of resources into that, and we'll continue to do that. From a water standpoint, we haven't done as much as I would like us to do. And I hope in the future maybe we can team up with TAWC and maybe do some projects together. I certainly have some ideas. I'm sure you guys do too. Some things we can look at. One project that we are funding is up in Kansas. The governor came out, I think this was last year, on a type of water initiative where they're really supporting some technology farms. I think there's really 3 of them. The first one of those that really has gotten started this last year is about 10 miles south of Garden City. We're funding some work there with the dragon line hose and looking and seeing how that maybe can save us some water. Have y'all worked with any of that work here with the dragon line? So I think that's a technology that I think has a place, has a future possibly. And so that's something we want to look at. So we are running a project there using the dragon line and just some limited irrigation on sorghum to see how that will work in the rotation. We're certainly encouraging some work in some other parts of the U.S. on rotations with sorghum, particularly with soybeans and cotton. We know there's some significant benefits in that rotation. Going back to the cotton crop, over to the soybean crop, and so we're encouraging some of that work. Something that I very much would like to see is corn sorghum. You drive around the country this year, you'll see a fair number of circles around. We've got a half circle of corn, half circle of sorghum. To me, that makes a lot of sense in that limited irrigated situation. And so I'd like to see some more work done on that and finding just how to make that system work. Something I hope we can do in the future. Rotation and systems with cotton, certainly something that's been looked at over the years. At Lubbock as well as at Halfway. I'll show you some of Dr. Rudowski's work here in just a second on some of that. But, this is some of his research from a couple of years ago, but over a few year period there. But cotton yields following sorghum. Years where we have below average rainfall, 18 to 44% higher yield, depending on the particular yield of what that yield bump was on cotton. So that's nothing new. We know that happens. Average rainfall. How often do we get an average rainfall or below average rainfall? Is it 50% of the time? Well, actually, it's 55% of the time. We actually have below average precipitation. Years with average rainfall, generally higher yields with that cotton crop, not always. And the years above average rainfall, and he had, I think, 3 different irrigation levels. This is the highest, actually, irrigation level that he had there. 0.13 inches per day was fairly low. There really wasn't much difference in the cotton yield in that particular situation. So this is the kind of work we'd certainly like to continue to support, and we'll do that. Halfway and other places as the opportunity arises. A little bit just on some agronomics on sorghum that I think plays into the irrigation. And I think there's a lot of potential for sorghum under limited or deficit irrigation. And I think to do that, we've got to change up some things a little bit. First of all, we've got to keep our seeding rate down, I think, to some extent, and we've got to promote this plant that has a much bigger head rather than a bunch of plants out there with fewer heads. And what that does, it increases our harvest index. So we have more of the resources going into grain than we do with the store. And that certainly is partially controlled by seeding rate. Now, tillering is going to enter into this. And that's where, in my mind, it's really important that we find some hybrids that are low tillering, because we've got to get to this point. If we can get to this point, and I think what we can do, we can start using a higher seeding rate under that limited and even full irrigation to bump those yields up. So corn yields have really gone up over the last 20 years. Why have corn yields gone up? Plant population. You know, when I first started with Texas A&M, we were recommending 24 to 26,000, 28,000 was about as much as we would ever recommend on plant population on corn. What are the guys using? What are you guys using now on corn if it's full irrigation? Considerably more than that. Some guys are pushing 40,000. And where a lot of the breeding efforts in corn actually has gone into has been increasing that stalk strength and just for those plants being able to stand a higher population. And I think sorghum has got to get to that in my mind for us to really increase those yields like we need to see. I'm going to close with this slide. Seeding rates is a big deal to me and most agronomists. A lot of times we just use too high of a seeding rate. And this is kind of my recommendation, depending on what your yield goal is, on kind of where I think your seeding rate ought to be. Again, as we get into some more, hopefully getting these low tillering hybrids, we may want to increase that some. But for now, this is kind of where I'm at on seeding rates. But anyway, that is all I have. I'd be glad to answer some questions.